You ruined everything. Please, I can't
Breathe!
My God, stop it! You're killing her!
You lied to everyone. To Mom, to me. How could you be so selfish?
I couldn't tell you.
I was scared.
Please try to understand.
The day my brother sold our ancestral home, without even calling me, I felt something in my chest twist so tight I thought my heart would crack open. Friends, before we start this story, I want to ask you a small favor. If what you hear resonates with your heart, please subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. And in the comments, let me know what city or state you're listening from. It always warms my spirit to see how many of us are out there. Enjoy the story. That was the line my brother texted me. Casual, cold, as if he were telling me the weather had changed. No warning, no explanation, just 8 words that knocked the breath out of my chest. I remember standing in my tiny apartment kitchen, still in my slippers, sunlight barely creeping through the blinds. I had been stirring a pot of oatmeal, the spoon slipping from my hand the moment I read the message. It clattered against the stove, but I didn't move. I couldn't, because the house he was talking about wasn't just a house. It was our house, Mama's house, Grandmama's house. A place built on stories and Sunday dinners and secrets whispered through thin bedroom walls. A place we were raised in, disciplined in, loved in, forgiven in. A place that held the echo of every ancestor who ever walked its creaking floors. And he sold it, just like that. No phone call, no meeting, no chance for me to walk through those rooms one last time, touch the peeling wallpaper Mama refused to replace, or breathe in the scent of magnolia blooming just outside the kitchen window. I grabbed my keys without thinking, heart pounding in a way I hadn't felt since Mama's funeral. My throat burned with a question I knew only my brother could answer. Why would you do this to me? But deep down, beneath the shock, beneath the shaking hands, there was something else. A memory, a secret. Something he didn't know I still had, something that could unravel the entire sale. And for the first time in years, I felt the old house pull me back home. People always assume that the breaking point, the betrayal, the argument, the loss, comes out of nowhere. But in my experience, it rarely does. It grows slowly, like a crack in old paint, widening over years until one day the whole wall crumbles. And looking back now, that house had been holding us together long after we stopped knowing how to love each other as siblings. Before everything fell apart, my life was quiet. Predictable. Some folks would call it small, but for me it was safe, steady, something I could control when the rest of the world had spun itself crazy. I lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment on the east side of town, the kind where you could hear your neighbor's alarm clock through the wall, but nobody bothered you otherwise. I worked mornings at the public library, shelving books and helping elders print out their prescriptions. I liked the smell of that place, old paper, carpet cleaner, and the faint cedar scent from the wooden study tables that had been there since before I was born. The library felt like a second home to me, one nobody could take away. Or so I thought. Most evenings, I'd come home, kick off my shoes, and sit in my little kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea. Sometimes I'd look at the small wooden box I kept above the fridge, a box Mama had given me on her last Christmas. Inside were the documents she'd told me to protect, the ones she'd whispered about when she thought my brother, Daniel, was out of earshot. "Baby," she'd said, her hand trembling around mine, "keep these somewhere safe. One day, you might need them more than you know." At the time, I didn't understand why she looked so heavy with worry. Daniel and I, well, we weren't perfect, but what siblings are? He was the golden child of the family, the one Mama bragged about to the ladies at church. 3 years older, handsome in a clean-cut way, always knowing the right things to say to make folks soften. He had charm, the way some people have freckles, natural, scattered all over him. But charm is a funny thing. It can look just like goodness from far away.
Growing up, Daniel and I were close enough. We'd ride our bikes to the creek, dig for crawdads, and race home before Mama's wooden spoon found out we were late. But as we got older, we drifted. Him chasing dreams in real estate, me staying home to care for Mama when her health began to falter. It wasn't resentment that grew between us. Not at first. It was distance. Unspoken things, missed calls, birthdays remembered by a text instead of a visit. And after Mama passed, that distance deepened like a river, widening with every storm. Still, I held on to the belief that he loved that house as much as I did. We had argued about renovations, taxes, and what to do with Mama's old sewing room, but we always agreed on one thing. The house stays in the family. He said it more than once, with his chest out, with conviction. It's our inheritance, sis, our legacy. I'd never let anything happen to it. I clung to those words the way a drowning woman clings to driftwood. Maybe because I needed to believe the best in him. Maybe because the alternative, the idea that he could betray me, was too painful to imagine. Life went on like that for years. Me visiting the house every few months, sweeping the porch, checking the pipes, touching up the paint. Daniel would show up every now and then, always in a rush, always talking business, always promising he'd help with the upkeep next time. Next time never came. The neighborhood had changed too. Some houses newly renovated, some boarded up. But ours, Mama's, always stood the same. Tired, but dignified, like an old woman who refuses to lie down even when her bones ache. Inside, everything still smelled faintly of lavender and pine sol. Mama's quilt lay folded over the back of the couch. The framed family photos were still dusted weekly, my doing, not Daniel's. I kept the curtains open so sunlight could pour in and warm the hardwood floors. There were days I'd sit at the kitchen table and swear I could hear Mama humming to herself, stirring her sweet potato pie mix. It's funny how a house can hold sounds long after the person who made them is gone. But the truth is, I didn't just go there to maintain the place. I went because it anchored me. Because losing Mama felt like someone had pulled the ground from under my feet, and the house was the only steady thing left. Daniel never understood that. One afternoon, about a month before that text message destroyed everything, I was sitting on the porch swing sipping iced tea when I saw Daniel pull up in a shiny black SUV. He stepped out in a tailored suit, talking loudly on his phone. He flashed me a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, sis," he called, still half distracted. "Just checking in." I remember thinking his energy felt off, too excited, too purposeful, like he was hiding something under his words. He stayed only 15 minutes, kept glancing at his watch, asked oddly specific questions about the property, repairs, taxes, the condition of the foundation. At the time, I brushed it off. I didn't know I was watching the first crack spreading. Looking back, the signs were there. The hurried visits, the secretive phone calls, the sudden interest in the house after years of neglect. But when you love someone, when you have shared blood and childhood memories and the grief of burying a mother, your mind refuses to go to the darkest explanation. You want to believe they would never hurt you. And that is how betrayal stays hidden, quiet, patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Little did I know, the moment had already been set in motion. And by the time I realized it, the house was already gone.
I always say that some truths don't come knocking at your door. They slide in through the cracks, soft, subtle, almost polite, until they settle in your chest like a weight you can't shake. My first clue came on a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where the sunlight drips slow through the blinds and the world feels too calm for anything bad to happen. I was at the library, sorting donated books in the back room. The radio was playing some old blues song Mama used to hum, and for a moment I felt peace settle on me, like a warm shawl. Then my phone vibrated. It was a voicemail. No caller ID. I pressed play. A man's voice. Quick. Breathless. Faint background noise like he was standing on a busy street.
Hi, this message is for Ms. Harper. I wanted to confirm the viewing appointment for the Maple Street property. The buyers will be there at 3 p.m. today. Thanks. I froze. Maple Street. Mama's house. My house? My blood ran cold. For a moment, I thought maybe I misheard. Maybe he meant Maple Avenue, or a different Harper family, or anything else. Because selling the house, showing it to buyers, making appointments without me, that wasn't just unlikely. It was impossible. My hand trembled as I replayed the voicemail. The man's voice was clear this time, too clear. Viewing appointment. Buyers. 3 p.m. By the time I realized I was holding my breath, my chest felt tight. A heat crawled up my neck. Fear mixed with the kind of anger that lies dormant until someone you trust pokes it awake. I didn't even clock out. I told Sasha at the front desk I needed to handle something urgent. And she just nodded, concern tightening her eyebrows. Outside, the air was sharp and windy, whipping at my jacket as I rushed to the bus stop. The ride across town felt endless. Every turn, every red light felt like the universe was dragging its feet on purpose. My knee bounced the entire time. Viewings? Buyers? Without me? I whispered to myself. No, he wouldn't do that. Daniel wouldn't. But my voice didn't sound convinced. When the bus finally dropped me off near Maple Street, I was half out the door before it came to a full stop. My feet pounded the cracked sidewalk as I headed toward the house. My heart was thudding so loudly I felt like I could hear it over the wind. And then I saw it. A silver sedan parked in front. 2 people standing on the walkway. 1 man, 1 woman, holding clipboards. And beside them, fiddling with keys at the front door, Daniel, my brother. Wearing his expensive loafers, his hair slicked back, his smile bright like nothing in the world was wrong. I stopped dead in my tracks. I don't think my brain even processed the cold air anymore. Everything inside me went numb. Daniel turned at the sound of my footsteps. "Sis?" he said, his smile faltering for just a second. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer that. I couldn't. My eyes were on the couple holding the clipboards. Buyers. Real buyers. Right there on Mama's porch. I walked closer, my voice low, trembling. "What's going on, Daniel?" He gave the couple a quick, awkward smile. Give me a moment. I need to speak to my sister." They nodded and stepped aside, whispering to each other. Daniel grabbed my elbow gently, but I pulled away. Why are there buyers here? Why did I get a voicemail about a showing? Why didn't you tell me? He let out a long breath, like I was the one being unreasonable. "I was going to tell you," he said softly. "I just needed to handle a few things first." "Handle?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "Daniel, this is our home. Mama's home. You said you promised we wouldn't sell it." He rubbed his forehead, looking tired. "Things change, sis. The market's hot. The property taxes are killing me. It's not practical to hold on to this place anymore." "Killing you?" I scoffed. "You haven't paid the taxes in 3 years. I have." His jaw clenched. A flicker of guilt passed through his eyes, so fast anyone else might have missed it. But I didn't. "So you're selling it without me? Without even telling me?" He glanced toward the buyers again. "Can we not do this right now?" "No," I said firmly. "We're doing this right now." Before he could answer, the woman with the clipboard stepped forward. "Is everything okay? We can come back if—" "No," Daniel said quickly. "Everything's fine. Just a family discussion." Family discussion. That's what he called it. I felt something inside me twist. Pain, betrayal, disbelief, all mixing into a cold, heavy ache. The woman cleared her throat politely. "If you could just give us a quick tour, we're on a tight schedule." Daniel turned to me, eyes pleading now. "Please don't make a scene." I stared at him. My own brother, the boy who used to race me down the hill behind the house, the teenager who promised Mama he'd always look after me, the man who stood by her hospital bed and said we'd keep her house in the family. Now he was asking me not to make a scene. I stepped back, stunned, numb. "Do what you want," I whispered. "You already are." He didn't answer. He just turned away, unlocked the front door, and ushered the buyers inside with that same charming smile. And me? I stood there, on the porch, listening to strangers' footsteps echo inside the home I cared for, preserved, protected. I stood there long after they'd gone inside. I stood there because my knees wouldn't carry me away, because the truth was finally sinking in. Daniel wasn't just thinking about selling the house. He wasn't considering it. He wasn't debating it. He was selling it. It was already in motion, probably contracts already signed. And for the first time, I realized something dark and heavy. He never intended to tell me. He never intended to let me say goodbye. He never intended to honor Mama's legacy. The betrayal was already done. And I was just now catching up.
Some betrayals hit you like a storm. Loud, violent, impossible to ignore. But others? They fall quiet, soft. They seep into you like cold water through thin shoes. Daniel's betrayal didn't roar. It whispered. It whispered all the way home. I don't remember the walk back to the bus stop. I don't remember climbing onto the bus or sitting in my usual seat behind the driver. What I do remember is the way my fingers kept shaking, tapping against my knee. Like my body was trying to warn me of something my mind hadn't yet pieced together. By the time I walked through my apartment door, my legs felt heavy. My chest felt hollow. I sat down at the small kitchen table, still holding my purse with both hands like it might keep me grounded. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a voicemail. It was a text from Daniel. "Sis, I'm sorry you found out like that. We'll talk later. Please don't stress. Everything's handled." Handled. That word hit me harder than anything he said on the porch. What exactly had he handled? With trembling hands, I grabbed the wooden box from above the fridge. I placed it on the table, the old hinges creaking softly as I opened it. Mama's handwriting was still on the inside lid. For my children, for truth. Inside were the documents she gave me years ago, birth certificates, tax papers, insurance forms, and a folder I never dared open fully. The property papers. I had looked through them once, right after Mama passed, but my grief was too raw back then to notice all the details. Now, under the harsh kitchen light, I spread them across the table. Deed, title, co-ownership papers, a notarized letter. My name on everything, right next to Daniel's. Co-equal owners of the home. No sale allowed without both signatures. My heart thudded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. "Lord," I whispered, my voice barely a breath. "What did he do?" I checked the sale authorization section. My signature wasn't on anything. Nothing had been updated. No new contract filed, no agreement signed. Legally, he couldn't sell the house alone. But he was showing it, marketing it, promising it, which meant only one thing. He was selling the house illegally. I grabbed my purse, stuffed the documents inside, and rushed out the door. I didn't even lock it behind me. The cold air slapped me across the face as soon as I stepped outside, but I barely felt it. I marched to the bus stop again, my steps quick, fueled by a storm rising inside me. I wasn't going to call him. I wasn't going to text. I was going to confront him face to face.
He lived only 20 minutes away by bus, in a modern apartment building overlooking the river. Too new, too expensive, too polished for someone who said taxes on Mama's house were killing him. When I reached his building, the doorman who knew me from the few family dinners Daniel invited me to greeted me. "Good evening, Miss Harper. Up to see your brother?" "Yes," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's urgent." He nodded and let me through. The elevator ride felt like it took an eternity, even though it stopped only twice before reaching Daniel's floor. My heart was pounding in my throat by the time I reached his door. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. I clenched my jaw, pulled out my phone, and dialed his number. From behind a door, I heard it buzzing. He was home. I knocked again, loud, sharp, impossible to ignore. This time, I heard footsteps. The door opened just a crack at first, like he was checking who it was before committing. When he saw me, his shoulders stiffened. "Sis," he exhaled, "can we please not do this tonight?" I pushed the door open with my palm and stepped inside. He didn't stop me. His apartment smelled faintly of cologne and takeout food. The lights were dimmed. Papers were spread across the kitchen island. House papers. Real estate listings. A sale contract. My sale contract. He hadn't expected me today. Not at the house, and certainly not here. "What is this?" I asked, my voice low but trembling with fury. "Tell me what you're doing, Daniel." He ran a hand through his hair and walked to the island, picking up the stack of papers. "I told you, the house needs to be sold." "Not without my permission," I snapped, pulling Mama's documents from my bag and slapping them onto the counter. "You know this. You know we're co-owners. You can't sell anything without my signature." He swallowed hard. His silence was his own confession. "You planned to fake it, didn't you? Forge my name, take everything, and hope I never found out?" "Sis," he began, his voice shaky, "don't you dare lie to me." He shut his mouth, looked away. "I needed the money," he said finally. "I'm in a tight spot. Some deals went bad. I'm drowning. I thought if I handled everything quickly, I could fix it before you had to ever know." I stared at him. This man I grew up with, laughed with, cried with. My big brother. Now, a stranger. "So your plan was what? Steal our home? Mama's home? Sell it behind my back?" His voice cracked as he spoke, the charm gone now, replaced with desperation. "I didn't think you'd understand. You're so sentimental about that house. I knew you'd make it hard." "Make it hard?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping me. "This isn't about being sentimental, Daniel. This is about trust, family, legacy, Mama's last wish." He flinched at that. "Mama didn't want the house sold. You promised her. You promised me." He closed his eyes tight. "I don't have a choice." "Yes," I said coldly. "You do, and you already made it." He looked at me, a mix of shame and stubbornness swirling in his eyes. For the first time in my life, I saw my brother fully. Not the charming man everyone adored, not the golden child Mama bragged about, a scared man, a selfish man, a man willing to betray his own blood for money. "I'm not signing anything," I said. "Not today, not ever." His face hardened just slightly. "If you don't work with me," he said quietly, "you're going to make this a lot worse." And that was the moment, right there, when something inside me snapped clean in half. Because he wasn't just betraying me, he was threatening me. I grabbed my purse, turned toward the door, and said, "No, Daniel, you made this worse the moment you decided to sell our mother's home behind my back." And I walked out. The door closed behind me softly, but the world around me felt like it had slammed shut. My brother wasn't just selling our house. He was willing to destroy me to do it. And that was a truth I wasn't going to let him get away with.
By the time I reached Maple Ridge, my hands were shaking so badly I had to wipe them on my skirt just to steady my breath. The sun was dipping low, laying that deep orange glow across the old neighborhood, the kind of light Mama used to say made even hurting hearts look softer. But nothing felt soft inside me that evening. Not when I pulled up and saw it. Our house. But not our house anymore. There was a silver SUV in the driveway, a type none of us could ever afford growing up. A small moving truck parked by the curb, two strangers carrying boxes across the yard like they belonged there, and Daniel? Sitting on the porch steps like he was waiting for a bus, head in his hands, elbows pressed to his knees. I didn't even close my car door quietly. I slammed it hard enough that the woman carrying a potted plant flinched. Daniel lifted his head slowly, like he already knew this was coming. He stood, straightening his shirt, but didn't move toward me. "Lisa, don't start," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't even look at him. My eyes were glued to that front door, our front door, wide open, showing a strip of hardwood floor where Mama had once placed a little braided rug she made herself, a rug that wasn't there anymore. "Tell me it's not true," I said, my voice steady instead of shouting. "Tell me you didn't sign the papers, that this is a misunderstanding, that Mama's house isn't gone." He closed his eyes. And right there, his silence was the answer. One of the neighbors, Mr. Gray from across the street, paused while taking groceries from his trunk. Mrs. Henley stopped watering her flowers. People sensed something coming. Lord knows, Maple Ridge always loved quiet drama. I stepped closer to Daniel. "Why, Daniel? Why would you sell without me? Why would you do that to Mama's memory, to me, to us?" He let out a long sigh, like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "I needed the money," his voice cracked slightly. "You know how tight things have been. I kept thinking I'd tell you, but every time I tried, I couldn't form the words." "That's a lie," I said, softly, not yelled softly. And he winced, like the softness hurt worse. "You promised her. Mama was dying in that bed, and you held her hand. You told her both her children would keep this home safe. He cut me off, louder than he meant to. "I know what I said." The new buyers came down the walkway quietly, trying not to stare. The husband held a clipboard. The wife clutched her purse like she wasn't sure whether to stay or lock herself back in the car. Daniel ran a hand over his face. "I was drowning, Lisa. Bills, debt. I thought selling it fast would fix everything. The agent said we had a great offer. Cash, no fuss. I panicked." "You panicked?" I took another step, my feet hitting those porch steps Mama swept every Saturday morning of her life. "You panicked and sold away our childhood? You panicked and handed strangers the keys before I could even say goodbye?" His jaw tightened. Shame rolled through his features, but not enough. Not enough to undo anything. "Where's my share?" I asked. Simple. Direct. He swallowed hard. There isn't much left." My breath froze. "What does that mean?" "It means," he whispered, breaking eye contact, "I used most of it before the sale even finalized, to pay off loans, past due notices. I thought I could make it right. I thought I had time." I stared at him, truly seeing my brother for the first time in years. The desperation he hid, the choices he buried, the mistakes he'd rather die than admit. "You stole from me." His lips parted, but no words came. "You didn't just sell Mama's house. You stole from your own blood." The wind grew still. Even the moving men paused. The sound of a passing car in the distance felt too loud for a moment like this. Daniel tried again. "Lisa, I'm sorry. I'll pay you back, I swear. I didn't mean for it to get this far." "Didn't mean to?" I repeated. "You signed your name. You handed over keys. You packed up Mama's things without telling me. You meant every part of this." Something hard cracked inside him. He stepped closer, eyes red.
You think you're perfect? You moved out. You left me with everything. The stress, the maintenance, the bills. Don't you turn this around on me. I didn't raise my voice, but he stepped back like I had. You didn't sell this house because you were overwhelmed. You sold it because you thought I wouldn't fight you, because you thought I was the gentle one, the forgiving one, the sister who wouldn't push back. He didn't deny it. I looked around the porch, running my fingers along the railing Mama painted every spring. You took advantage of my love, I said, voice breaking for the first time, and you thought I'd stay quiet. He whispered, Lisa, please. But then the wife of the new buyers stepped forward timidly. We're so sorry, she said, adjusting her scarf. We didn't realize there were family issues. The agent told us everything was clear. I nodded her kindly. It's not your fault. You're just trying to start your life here. I understand. She relaxed a little. Then I turned back to Daniel. But, see, that's the thing. Everything isn't clear. He frowned. Lisa, don't do this. Oh, I'm doing it. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded packet of papers, the very ones I told him I found last night. You forgot something important, Daniel, I said, holding them up. Mama added a clause, a legal one. You cannot sell this property without my written consent. His face drained of color. And guess what? I continued softly. My signature isn't on that contract. The buyers exchanged looks, concerned, confused, suddenly unsure. Daniel's mouth opened, but no sound escaped. I took one slow step toward him. Now, brother, tell me again how this sale was final.
Daniel didn't speak right away. He just stood there on that porch, Mama's porch, with his lips slightly parted and his eyes darting between me, the buyers, and the papers trembling in my hand. The weight of truth changes a man's posture. His shoulders, once stubborn and defensive, slowly caved in like something inside him had finally given up pretending. Mrs. Henley from next door whispered something to her husband. Mr. Gray, who'd lived across from us for 40 years, leaned against his mailbox like he was watching the end of a play he'd seen coming. Maple Ridge didn't usually get entertainment like this, but they also felt the history beneath it. This wasn't gossip. This was the fracture of a family they'd known since Mama first moved here with 2 toddlers and a suitcase full of faith. The wife of the new buyers, a thin woman with soft eyes, took a nervous step toward me. So, does this mean the sale isn't valid? Her husband pulled the contract from his clipboard, flipping through the pages, frowning deeper each second. Daniel finally swallowed, his voice barely steady. Lisa, please, can we talk inside? Inside? As if that was still an option. As if he still had the right to ask. I shook my head. No, we talk right here, in the open, because you made this mess in the open, Daniel. He winced again. Shame does that. It hits soft first. The husband turned his clipboard toward me. Ma'am, if what you're saying is true, this sale could be contested or even reversed. The agent assured us everything was cleared legally. We really didn't want trouble. I know, I said gently. You're not at fault here. Daniel snapped, frustration leaking through the cracks in his fear. I didn't know Mom added anything. I didn't see any updated documents. I met his eyes, unblinking. That's because you never looked. You rushed. You chose the fastest offer. You ignored every red flag because you wanted the money now. He started pacing the edge of the porch, running both hands through his hair. His voice rose, not in anger, but in panic. I can't undo this, Lisa. I can't lose that money. He stopped himself, but it was too late. Everyone already understood. He didn't have the money. Not a dime. Mr. Gray cleared his throat from across the street. Son, you can't sell what you don't fully own. That's just the law. Daniel pressed his palms together, squeezing them like he wished they could hold his collapsing world in place. I messed up, okay? I messed up, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I took a slow, deep breath,
choosing every word with the measured softness Mama taught me. You didn't think you were hurting me because you weren't thinking about me at all. You were thinking about saving yourself. He blinked, a faint tremor in his lower lip, the kind only a sibling can read. That was the first time he looked like my little brother again. But that didn't change what he'd done. The buyer stepped aside and quietly called their agent. Within minutes, a black sedan pulled up, the listing agent stepping out with a tension in her face like she already sensed trouble. "Is there an issue?" she asked, stiff smile in place. The husband pointed to the clause as he explained. Her cheeks drained. She skimmed the document, flipping pages faster, her breath sharpening. I wasn't aware of an additional clause," she stammered. "Mr. Daniels, you didn't mention any co-owner restrictions." Daniel rubbed his forehead. I didn't know." The agent exhaled sharply. "Without her written consent, this sale technically isn't enforceable. The title company will put a freeze on the funds immediately until this is resolved." The buyers looked devastated, but relieved they weren't responsible for the mistake. Daniel looked like the ground itself had betrayed him. He whispered, almost choking on the words, "So the money is gone? Frozen?" "Yes," the agent replied softly. "For now, no one can touch it." I let that settle over him, not cruelly, but truthfully. He sank down onto the porch steps, elbows on knees, head in his hands, just like when I first arrived. Except this time, the weight wasn't fear of being caught. It was the consequence finally landing. The neighbor slowly retreated, the buyers stepped back to their car, the agent made a quiet apology and left. Soft murmurs faded down the street. Soon it was just the two of us. Daniel lifted his head, eyes wet, voice breaking. "Lisa, I never meant for everything to fall apart like this." I sat beside him, not close, but close enough to remind him we were still siblings beneath all this hurt. I said, "You didn't just sell a house. You sold the one place Mama believed would keep us together." "But Daniel, listen to me." He looked up. "It's not too late to fix the legal part. But the emotional part?" I exhaled slowly. "That's what we're gonna have to work through." He nodded, eyes falling closed like those words hurt more than any legal consequence. For the first time since Mama passed, my brother looked truly, painfully human.
The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected, though quieter didn't mean easy. Maple Ridge seemed to hold its breath after that day on the porch. The frozen sale created more paperwork than anyone wanted, and Daniel spent long nights at his lawyer's office, while I, cautiously, began walking through the house room by room. It was strange being back here without him rushing through or me holding my tongue. I could hear the old creak in the hallway, the slight whistle of wind through the cracked window panes, and the smell of varnished wood mixed with memories I couldn't name without feeling a stab in my chest. But instead of pain, it began to feel like reclaiming something, a piece of myself that had been waiting quietly for me to notice it again. I didn't try to erase what Daniel had done. Forgiveness isn't a coat you throw on to make everything warm again. It's more like lighting a candle in a room where the shadows are heavy. You don't get rid of the dark. You just shine light enough to see where you stand. Daniel and I started talking. Not the heated exchanges of the porch, not even the trembling conversations over phone calls. This was slower, longer silences, shared memories that were awkward at first, but grew tender. He admitted everything, the panic, the greed, the shame, and I admitted mine, how I'd felt abandoned, how my heart still clung to this house like it was the last thread tying me to Mama. We didn't fix everything in a day. Healing never works that fast. But I began to feel something I hadn't in a long time, calm. A deep, quiet confidence that the life we once shared, the legacy we wanted to protect, could still exist without bitterness swallowing it whole. I spent afternoons painting the porch railing, humming old songs Mama loved. Daniel mowed the lawn, and sometimes we just sat together on the steps, neither of us needing words. Slowly, the neighbors returned. Not with judgment, but with nods of understanding.
Maple Ridge had watched our fracture and our reconciliation like a mirror for their own lives. I also started to work again, on my own terms, not running from responsibilities or being tethered to someone else's mistakes. I organized local history tours for the neighborhood, using our house as a centerpiece. Every corner told a story, every photograph, every squeaky floorboard whispered of mama, of childhood, of family. People paid to hear it, but more than that, I felt like I was finally owning my voice again. Daniel was there sometimes, not as a shadow, but as a reminder that even betrayal could be met with honesty. He learned to respect my boundaries, and I, slowly, let him. I didn't erase the hurt. I just carried it differently, like an old photograph tucked safely in my bag, visible when needed, but no longer weighing down every step. One evening, as the sun was spilling golden light across the living room, I found myself standing by the window, watching the old tree Mama planted swaying in the wind. Daniel was out back, whistling softly as he trimmed the hedges. I felt a quiet peace that was stronger than anger, bigger than betrayal, and far more beautiful than revenge could ever be. I realized that I hadn't lost. Not really. The house, the memories, the love we shared as siblings, none of it was gone. It had been paused. And now, finally, I was free to live the next chapter, not trapped by what someone else chose to do. I picked up my brush again and painted, letting the rhythm of color fill the silence. For the first time in years, I understood that healing isn't about undoing the past. It's about walking forward with it in your hands, feeling it, learning from it, and still finding beauty. Sometimes I'd catch Daniel looking through the window, a shy, almost apologetic smile tugging at his lips. And I'd smile back, not because everything was perfect, but because we'd survived. Because even broken trust can grow into something stronger when honesty, courage, and patience guide it. By the time the neighbors noticed the little changes I'd made, the curtains, the garden, the fresh coat of paint, I felt proud, in a way that had nothing to do with the house or the money, and everything to do with me. The house was our heritage, yes, but my heart, my voice, my life, those were mine to reclaim. And reclaim I had. And as I closed the door that night, listening to the wind whistling through the old oak tree outside, I felt Mama's presence, not as a shadow of loss, but as a quiet approval. She had trusted me once, and, in the end, I had trusted myself too, and that trust had been enough.
Standing in the doorway that night, I let my eyes wander over the house one last time before turning off the lights. Each corner held a memory. The laughter, the whispered secrets, the tears we'd shared as a family. And now, after all the chaos, betrayal, and heartbreak, it also held peace. Not because nothing had happened, but because I had finally reclaimed my story. I learned something crucial along the way. Life doesn't always play fair. People you trust can disappoint, family can hurt, and things you hold dear can be taken in an instant. But what no one can take is your voice, your courage, your choice to stand tall and carry on. Sometimes I still think of that moment on the porch, Daniel's face pale, the neighbors watching, the new buyers frozen in uncertainty. And I smile quietly to myself, because that day marked the beginning of something stronger, not just for me, but for the love and respect I carry for the family I choose to protect, the legacy I choose to honor, and the life I choose to live. Would you have stood up the way I did? Could you face betrayal and still find your own strength? Life doesn't give us instructions, but it does give us choices. And how we respond, that is the story we leave behind. If my story moved you, or if you've ever faced a betrayal that shook you to your core, share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more untold stories, and remember, your voice matters, even when the world tries to silence it.